You ever stop and think about how we actually know what happened in the past? I mean, it's not just about digging through a bunch of dusty old books, right? It's way more exciting than that. It's kind of like a giant detective story. So let's jump right in and start looking at the clues.
Yeah, that's really the big question, isn't it? How do we take all these little scattered pieces from ages ago and turn them into a story that actually makes sense? What are the tools? What are the sources that historians use to build this picture of what came before us?
I absolutely love this quote. It just nails it. History isn't some static, boring list of dates and facts that you just memorize. Nope, it's an active conversation. Think about it. We, right here in the present, are constantly asking questions about the past. And the clues the past left behind? Well, those are its answers. Okay, so if we're gonna have this dialogue with the past, we first need to get on the same page. Let's start with the absolute basics of this whole mystery. History, the study of the human past. Seems pretty simple, right? But that word study is actually super important. It means there's a process, a real method to it. It's not just some fairy tale, we're told. It's a field of investigation where people are actively hunting for evidence to build the story. All right, before we even touch any evidence, we need a way to organize it. We need a framework, a timeline, and we have to get our heads around the immense scale of time we're talking about here. And I mean, seriously, it is mind-boggling. Okay, wow. This timeline really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? The Earth itself is 4.5 times billion years old. Primates, they don't even show up until about 10 million years ago. And us, Homo sapiens, we're brand new, only appearing around 300,000 years ago. And look at this. The invention of writing is just 6,500 years ago. It's so close to the present. So in the grand cosmic scheme of things, our entire recorded history is, well, it's just a blink of an eye. So to organize our own little sliver of history, historians have a global system. You've probably seen it. BCE, which stands for Before Common Era, and CE for Common Era. It's basically the modern, more neutral version of BC and AD. Time counts backwards in BCE and forwards in CE. Simple enough, right? But there's a little quirk in this system that trips a lot of people up. Let's try a little thought experiment. All right, picture this. You're living in the year 2 BCE, so that's 2 years before the Common Era kicks off. And now, poof, you've time traveled forward, and the calendar says 2 CE, so 2 years into the Common Era. So here's the question. How many years have actually passed between those two dates? I mean, your first instinct is probably to say 4, right? 2 plus 2 equals 4, seems logical. But remember that little quirk I mentioned? Well, the history of our calendar has a fascinating little secret. The answer is actually 3. Only 3 years have passed. How is that possible? Well, here's a great piece of trivia for you. There is no year 0 in our calendar system. It just doesn't exist. The timeline jumps straight from 1 BCE to 1 CE. So you'd live through 1 BCE, then 1 CE, and then 2 CE. That's 3 years. It's a wild reminder that even something as basic as how we count years has its own weird, complex history. Okay, so we've got our timeline. Now, who are the detectives that actually fill in the details? Let's meet the experts, the people who really dig up the secrets of our past. First up, you've got geologists. These are the folks who read the story of the Earth itself. They're studying the rocks, the soil, the mountains, basically the very foundation of our world. They help us understand the massive environmental shifts that literally set the stage for all of human history. Next, we've got paleontologists. You probably know these guys. They're the fossil hunters. They study the preserved remains of ancient life, both plants and animals. They're the ones who bring these incredible lost worlds, with dinosaurs and all sorts of amazing creatures back to life. And then, when we zoom in on human history, we have the archaeologists. You could call them the ultimate detectives of the human past. They're the ones literally digging up the things people left behind: tools, pottery, even entire buildings. They find that direct, physical proof of how people actually lived their lives. So we've met our detectives. Now let's look at the clues they're working with. These sources, the actual evidence of history, usually fall into a few main categories. Yeah, you can basically sort the evidence into 3 big buckets. First, you have archaeological sources. That's all the physical stuff people left behind. Then there are literary sources,
basically anything written down. And finally, oral sources, the stories and traditions that get passed down just by people talking. Each one gives us a totally different window into the past. Let's dive into that first category for a second, archaeological sources. We're talking about the tangible stuff, the physical objects, things you could, hold in your hand, or, let's be real, probably see behind glass in a museum. But the point is, they're a direct, physical connection to the actual people who made and used them. And this is a perfect example of how different that physical evidence can be. On the one hand, you've got this ancient rock art, something so personal, so artistic. And on the other, you've got this intricate little seal from the Indus-Saraswati civilization, which was probably used for something more official, maybe trade or administration. They're both physical objects, but man, they tell us such different stories about the people who made them. And that really brings us to one of the most important ideas in all of history. No single clue ever tells the whole story. Ever. A historian's real job is to pull all of these different threads together. You take the physical stuff from archaeology, you cross-reference it with written things, like manuscripts or records, and then you add in the cultural context you get from oral traditions, like folklore. It's only when you combine all of them that you can start to see a rich, detailed picture of the past. Now, I know this can all sound a little abstract and, academic, but here's the cool part. You actually use these exact same skills all the time, maybe without even realizing it. Just think about your own family. Seriously, how do you know your own family's history? How do you know where your grandparents were from or what your parents were like when they were kids? You've done your own little historical investigation. Those old family photos, those are your archaeological sources. The stories your grandma tells you over and over again, that's your oral history. And any old diaries, letters, or even birth certificates, yep, those are your literary sources. See, when you piece all of that together to understand your own family's past, you are thinking exactly like a historian. So I'll leave you with this question. What story will the sources you're leaving behind, your photos, your texts, your digital footprint, what will they tell the historians of the future?